Good morning. Welcome to the final program in Metropolitan Community College's 17th Annual Diversity Matters Film and Lecture Series. The 18th annual series will begin with the next academic year, September 2023. Watch mccneb.edu/film series for details later this summer. In the meantime, you may suggest film and lecture possibilities when you complete today's online evaluation. Watch the chat for a link to the evaluation and other important messages. Your microphones are silenced. You may send questions or concerns to me through the chat at moderator Barbara Velasquez. I will present your questions to our discussion leader. April 22nd, this Saturday, is Earth Day, an annual celebration that honors the achievements of the environmental movement and raises awareness of the need to protect Earth's natural resources for future generations. It's our honor then today to present Inhabitants, Indigenous Perspectives on Restoring Our World. And it's even a greater honor to have producer Ben Alex Dupris, who will lead our discussion after the viewing. Ben Alex Dupris is an enrolled member of the Colville Confederated tribes where he grew up. Over the years, he has worked in entertainment, tribal language preservation, frontline journalism, and youth media training. In addition to producing Inhabitants, he is the director of Sweetheart Dancers on Showtime, a PBS American Masters short with Firelight Media, and Nuwu Means the People for the Smithsonian Arts and Industry exhibit, Futures We Dream. Most recently, he released Chumash Powered on YouTube, an original Patagonia 50th anniversary film. Please welcome Ben Alex Dupris, who will introduce today's film.
Great, thank you so much. It's good to see so many people here on an early morning film screening. I know that can be tough. So I really appreciate you checking in here to watch Inhabitants. Inhabitants is a very exciting film for all of us because it really marks a very special moment in documentary filmmaking for Indigenous people. It's a collaborative effort. The directors, Costa and Anna, had previously worked for the USDA and are very scientific minded and really had a great idea for, kind of bringing together the story of these 5 bioregions across Native America with an eye for, kind of leaning into what it is that we're doing right. Like, what are the historical practices of Indigenous people that have survived the test of time, and have those practices evolved, and how they evolved over time to adapt to our modern world. We get stuck behind a lot of tropes around Native America that we're just figuring out technology, or that in order for things to be perfect, we have to go back to the blanket or to a time when we don't have this we have a separation between ourselves and our ecological Indigenous knowledge. And that just doesn't seem to be the case. When you see this film, you'll be introduced to several people across Turtle Island that have been living traditionally and living in the ways of our ancestors, but also really moving forward with adapting to how we can address climate change and some of these bigger ecological issues from our perspective. And it's really an exciting moment for documentary filmmaking to be able to share these kind of stories that don't, what I like to say, hinge on a lot of poverty porn, a lot of things that focus on the negativity of our recent past. Those are all very important issues, and I advocate for those films greatly. But I feel like this is the film that really opens the door for a conversation in our educational systems around what Native people are already doing to help our changing world. So I just wanted to leave it at that and let the film do the talking, and I'm excited to hear your thoughts and comments after the screening, and I'll be here for that as well. So thank you so much for letting me introduce Inhabitants. Very large team of tribal people, of non-tribal people. It was a real cooperative effort for inhabitants. Obviously the funders with Namaste and Calopia Foundation, and just a lot of really interesting tribal people who came on board to watch and vet their portions of the film so that it was agreeable to their communities. So I think what really worked for me as a native filmmaker who works kind of in a vacuum, it's really exciting to see a film that continues to build momentum across the country, as a film that was a cooperative led effort with all of these different organizations and individuals who might not see eye to eye on a lot of issues, but did really come together on this overall theme of how Indigenous people are combating climate change, or also just continuing to survive in the face of colonization, and just completely reinventing ourselves over time. And I think that that's really a message that hasn't been told in non-native led films. I think that as a also somewhat of a student and teacher of Indigenous filmmaking, I find that our perspectives are usually very rudimentary, cookie cutter, pan Indian, made to kind of just be a general backdrop or an extra to the world in which colonial society continues to just see us as a element of the past. And through this new framing and this new cooperation with both scientific experts and Indigenous filmmakers and local people in their communities, we're now shaping a new picture that expands the horizon of what we think our work is on this planet, and it gives new teeth to young Indigenous people who want to pursue either the science or arts, because it really helps us see that there's a bigger story here, and that Native people have been working hand in hand with our land, for forever. I really, even when I first came into the project, I thought, the greatest line that they had already shot was, when people came to this country or this land, they thought that they were encountering this beautiful, lush, nature, that it was all a forbidden garden kind of thing, and it was just Indians in the land for thousands of years cultivating and building a society that wasn't based on plastics and fossil fuels and other and metals. It was a very organic relationship to the earth, and that's kind of what people are talking about wanting to go back to when they're afraid of the glaciers melting, and our floodplains rising, and the water being too toxic to drink anymore. So I think it really does open up multiple conversations about the direction that we're going as people, as artists and filmmakers, as politicians, and organizations that are on each of these individual tribes all over the country who are doing their part. We're highlighting the workers, the people that are doing it. It's different than showcasing sensationalism, right? And I don't know if there's a question before I keep going, but I always find it interesting that even within the paradigm of Indigenous film, our biggest stories are about very sensational individuals who have done something grand. We really go for the hero journey, and not a whole lot is said about those people who have been working and living, getting their degrees and taking care of their families and communities for 80 years at a time. Sorry, you hear a bird in the background there. That's one of our birds. But yeah, I think that's really interesting that this is a film that highlights people doing the work at grassroots levels that weren't necessarily looking for a boost or wanting to be showcased in this way, but it did show them in a very beautiful light in the work that they do in each of their communities to just really help Indian country get along. And that doesn't really seem to exist in a lot of Hollywood perspectives around indigeneity. It's always got to be the one big person who might have saved the world, and here we see the cooperative led effort of Indigenous communities who are all speaking to each other and doing things that really can help maintain the way that we live as Indian people.
Thank you. That I had noted that You did such a good job of showing the diversity among Native peoples. And when you mentioned right now that, maybe they don't all agree on everything, that is so true, that you really were able to bring this together. I think it's has to have opened the eyes of a lot of our audience members, and really, really appreciate that. So we have a couple questions, and knowing that you're the producer, I don't know, when we get down to some of the details of what we saw on the film, it's okay to say I don't know the answer. But want to thank Ryan Newton, who has his class watching. And he said one of the students wanted to know, when they're doing the management of fires and they're lighting the areas, they wanted to know how those tools light, if they use a gas product to light.
I'm pretty sure. I think it's just one of those, like those torches, those propane torch devices, and I think you can get them at your local sporting stores and things. They're used to just clear brush, and they're propane based. I can't be 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure that's what they are.
And I think that the documentary did such a good job of describing how Native people took care of this, and the women gathering, gathering some of that brush to make baskets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in the fires. We hear kind of at high levels, or at least I've heard, that at a government level, we have it taken care of, the burns that need to be happened, but this showed it in, I think, a more in-depth way. So I want to thank you for that. Lisa's asking, do you see the federal government being more cooperative with tribes that are implementing Native practices to protect and restore the land?
I think that the landscape is changing, obviously, under Deb Haaland's appointment, Secretary Interior. I do see positive changes in that regard. I do think we have been lobbying Washington for quite some time, and now with some of the affluence that comes from being gaming tribes, the coalitions are doing a better job of getting into the ear of the politicians, and obviously getting close to swaying elections, whether it be in Arizona or other states in which the Native populations can really bring out the vote. So I think we're looking at positivity in that direction. It is. I don't think there'll ever be a beautiful relationship between the U.S. government and tribes, as long as sovereignty issues continue to soil the conversation. Again, it has to always be stated, they've never honored a treaty. None of the supreme law of the land does not have the same context to the U.S. government as it does to Indian people. So I think there'll always be conflict, but I don't think this story is really about that. I think this story is about the notes between the notes, the gray areas of our movement. And just really, we're at the really what's called the 1.0 of Native filmmaking. I mean, we have some great successes, but the truth is these stories need to be told by more students. There needs to be more Native filmmakers, breaking off into individual communities, and journalists and storytellers who can go get their degrees in science, and also, on the backside, make a few documentaries similar to the directors of this project. It's really about impact and raising awareness. For instance, and here's just to go back really quickly to the fire analogy. The women who started the fires traditionally in Northern California and had that culture in place. It was really, we're really in a moment in time where we're really polarized with with Me Too and missing and murdered Indigenous women, and kind of this focus on patriarchy, and just a lot of really like strong conversations around race and gender and equity and all of this. And one of the things you see with the fire burners and the weavers and the fishermen, and some of these stories, the buffalo culture, is they were very unifying things for our people. They were things that required and had ceremony and had songs and had relationships between men and women and two spirits, and all the different ways you look at it. So, in essence, what we're talking about is also a huge hit on the fundamental structure of our society. and that goes directly to the land and goes directly to the climate change conversations we're having. And so when you hear an elder say, go back to your culture, go back to your ways, it's sometimes difficult for younger people, to, especially my own children and others, to understand what that really means. And they used to say it to me when I was a kid, like, what does that mean? Uh, a- and and now I start to look at it from a filmmaker's perspective and a storyteller, and I see that, what they're saying is these kinship systems that exist for gathering and harvesting our buffalo and our traditional medicines and our foods and our, they're all tied together in a way that really allows for a cross conversation within our communities that doesn't really exist in the way that colonialism frames, America. You just go to the store, you grab your food, you leave, you have blinders on. I don't want to see anybody. In these systems, they're very, very much hands-on, and time spent and you're putting time in with your community. You're learning about your neighbor, and so it really is, from a 1,000-foot view, the difference between two major structures of living that are now trying to coalesce, you know, post American industrial age, and so it's really interesting. We're talking about things that have existed for a long time, now trying to re-enter our communities at a time when the movements are on very specific rules and goals around decolonization and anti-patriarchy, and they're all valid. It's just difficult for a young person to decipher that, especially if they didn't grow up in a community. So hopefully films like this are able to kind of break down specifically how communities are approaching their version of climate change and internal turmoil around reestablishing our communities in a healthy and positive way.
All
That was a
right.
big mouthful.
Yeah.
You
Well,
just got to give me a little something to go, and then I go.
hey, that's so appreciated because what you say is really powerful. And I want to thank our audience for coming up with some great questions. Thanks also to our colleagues from tribal colleges in the state who have joined us. And we have a question. Will this film be available for the general public or Indian community colleges, to be more specific?
Yeah, definitely. You can go to inhabitantsfilm.com, and what's really great about the website is it has the preview trailer if you want to share it with someone in your administration. It has all the contact info, and there is, because of the impact campaign of wanting to get the film out to as many tribal colleges and youth as possible, you can email them and request that, there's a screener for your community. So especially in tribal communities, if there's a budget shortfall, or that they should be able to see the film for free, and it is available online. I think you can. I don't remember if it's Vimeo or YouTube or something, but you can purchase it or rent it for a few dollars if you want to share it that way as well. But it's pretty available across the board, and there are DVDs you can order and everything like that. So.
Excellent. And I want to let the Metropolitan Community College community know that this showing is a one-time showing. However, if you do have Metro credentials, which would be your Metro email, so Metro students, staff, there's a perpetual screening license through the generosity of our libraries. So if you go through the library system, you can watch this as many times as you want. If you are not credentialed with a Metro email, you can go to the library and they can set it up for you to see it there. So check in with me afterwards if you don't know how to manage all that. But we try to make this film continued, a continued availability of the documentaries that we show. And the library has been a great partner in that. So
It's amazing.
again, from a student group, how can we as Americans push the importance of farming and growing food, protecting forests and plants that are important to our health and environment?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, when we say how do we, it really is a matter of like what each individual feels their calling is in their lifetime. And, obviously, becoming a farmer is very difficult. It's not an easy task, but it's achievable. Finding ways to advocate and plug into your local communities around food sovereignty, water quality issues, reduction of fossil fuel projects, whether that be in politics or agriculture or just being able to, be a sideline activist. It really is just a matter of finding your perspective on this, and it's not going away for any one of us. The climate change conversation is truly upon us, and we see it in real time. While it was maybe, I don't know if you had 90-degree weather in Omaha or something, but yeah, believe we were in, it was 28 degrees here in Washington State. So as you see more and more, that we're having these deeper, later winters and summers, and it really is kind of a conversation we should be having every day. And I try to have that same conversation with my children, and not put the pressure on them to be responsible for the solutions, but just know that we are moving into an adaptation phase of the world, in which we're all going to have to be responsible for that in some way, whether it's developing your recycling programs, walking on the foot, having a lighter footprint, using less fossil fuel. I mean, it really is just kind of all the solutions are out there in every magazine and every TV show on the changing landscape of America, through climate change. From an Indigenous perspective, I think that our rules and stories and methodologies have really existed for quite some time, and a lot of that knowledge is available to individuals who want to go and research that, or go into the communities and find out how we did all of this. Why did fire become such an enemy number one at the time? How did our water systems infrastructures get so dilapidated? I mean, these are all really big questions. And for me personally, at my stage of life and what I'm doing with film, I'm not able to go back and reinvent myself as a water quality expert. So I mean, I have limitations as to what I can do in my part in the whole thing. But each one of us has an opportunity to find a slice of life that fits within the scope of work that is in front of us, which is to do our best to keep the planet moving and temperatures under wraps.
Well, I want to say to everybody that there's still some questions in the chat. I'm going to see if I can, get some answers from you outside of the session, but we need to honor everyone's time. There's always the questions about what can we do, and there are many organizations in the area that you could consider volunteering with, and we'll try to see if we can get a list to add to some of the emails that go out. But above all, we've all heard people say your vote doesn't count. I want to say your vote counts, your vote counts, your vote counts. And please consider registering to vote, and then, really check to see who you're voting for and whether they are going to follow your initiatives. But for Mr. Ben Alex Dupris, do you have a final message for us today before we shut things down?
Yes, I appreciate it. I would like to say that, throughout my lifetime, because it was very difficult. I grew up in the 80s and 90s as a kid, and it was, there was a lot of things we didn't know about the world. It was just kind of like the world shifted on a dime in the last 10 years, and that's a fact. But I was able to adapt and to learn and to continue pushing myself to be someone who always took in the newest information that I could, so I could make a better understanding of the world that I grew up in. As information becomes more and more readily available, the best you can do is really to just inform yourself and to get excited about what you know, what you're interested in learning. If your goal is just to be, if you just want to work on a riverboat and just kind of paddle people around for the rest of your life, that's actually very advantageous to having good conversations about climate change. If you it doesn't matter what you want to do, because I've been 100 jobs before I was a producer and a director. I've had 100 jobs, and each one of those jobs led to a really inspiring conversation about how I wanted to become something better, or better myself in the future. So it really doesn't matter what you want to do. It's just be passionate about what you want to do, and find a way to grow into that space. and always know that learning is the best medicine because it helps you really grow and be informed about the world around you. And that doesn't matter what age you are. You know, I'm still evolving as a human being, and this conversation around climate isn't going to end. You know, in your regions, your neighborhoods, you're dealing with 20,000 miles of pipeline. You're dealing with drought and all kinds of crazy issues. And so that's always going to need awareness, you know, and it's going to need conversations to happen at the local levels. So I don't know if that's great advice, other than just if you don't enjoy what you're doing, you'll lose momentum, and you can't fight every fight. You have to select something that feels reasonable and that you can achieve something in that space. And otherwise, the climate change like fight feels like a giant weight on your head, and it never comes off. So just finding small things you can do to contribute is very important. And that's kind of why, as a filmmaker, I enjoy doing projects like Inhabitants, because it does, you know, kind of really make me feel like I'm doing something to help the people. Uh, uh, and so, yeah, that's about all I can say. You know, be positive and don't be afraid of climate change. Don't let the doomsdayers make you feel like this is the end of the world, because they've been saying that for thousands of years as well. I'm sure it's going to be fine. So just be happy.
All right. Well, thank you so much. What a pleasure, what an honor for us to have you here today. It's always an honor to have a director or a producer, but your heart has been sensed throughout your conversation. I think you've left us with great things to think about. And I want to thank you, and I'm sure everybody else does too, for the work that you're doing. I mean, this is a huge project, and I believe it will have a great impact across communities throughout the world, I suspect. So thank you very much.
Much appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Right. And everybody in the audience, again, this is our final presentation in the 17th annual Film and Lecture Series. I want to thank you for being here today. I also want to thank those of you who have been here throughout the year. We appreciate your attention, and the questions and everything that you provided really helped today. Thanks also to faculty and members who involve their students. Evaluation slide, please. There we go. So we've got in the chat, you've got that link. We do appreciate your feedback always. So thank you for doing that. And then we have a couple programs I'd like to tell you about. Next week, the Diversity Matters book series will have its final session for this academic year. And we are looking at House of Sticks. Thank you. I'm slower than you are. April 26th, Wednesday at 12:30. David Din, who grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska, but now lives in Georgia, I believe, and was 1 year old when his family came as Vietnamese refugees. He's here to talk to us about the book written by Lee Tran, who tells the story of one family, one Vietnamese family, and it's a delightful book. You do not have to read it to participate, but it's a great read. I highly recommend it. And again, thank you to our libraries who keep copies of those books. Next slide. It has been 4 years since the Cinco de Mayo celebration has been in person. 2019 was the last one. COVID caused us to cancel 2020 and then do virtual celebrations the next couple of years. We're really excited to be together. In-person costs will cover the food of $15 presented by La Mesa Mexican restaurant. If you prefer to sit behind a screen, you will also be able to view via Zoom. But being there in person can be really exciting. So please get your registrations done for those. And thanks to everybody. Thank you to Isaac for your great assistance today in technology, and want to wish everybody a good afternoon.